Welcome to our second session of the week. This week is an IP week, and IP is very important to all of us. IP basically means intellectual property, and this panel here is a very diverse panel coming from chartered accountants to startup mentors to investors to people who are advising startups on various issues. Let me start this session by introducing Sony, the lady on the panel. Sony, thank you so much for coming over. So Sony is an entrepreneur. She's driven by pure passion. So we'll talk about pure passion, what pure passion means later on. Sony is a founder of a company called 72 DPI Skills. She supports promising startups with funding, networking, and professional guidance. She has been helping startups in building their brands because that's very important to Sony and to startups. And she supports startups to be investor ready, and she helps them with different strategies and business models. She's a passionate founder and she helps in overall growth and holistic development of startups. Sony is a BSc in zoology and also an MBA. So we'll talk about her passion for animals and zoology and about MBA as well. Sony, thank you so much for coming over. Looking forward to speaking with you in the session. Thank you very much. Over to you, Arnab. So Arnab is a serial entrepreneur. He has been as a founder and CEO of several companies. Currently, he's a CEO MD of a company called Array Innovative, which is an umbrella company and with a portfolio of 10 ventures, which includes Business Plan Experts, which is a dedicated company for making business plans for startups. He also is the CEO of a company called Presentations GFX, which basically does fabulous presentations for startups. Many other companies also are being run by Arnab, and one of the companies is called Crazy About Startups, which tells you about the news and analysis of startups and what startups are doing in a particular space. So the lot which Arnab can teach us in terms of mentoring guidance and how he helps startups. He has helped over 1,800 startups in his career so far. Arnab, you're welcome on the board. Looking forward to speaking with you.
Thanks a lot, Amit.
Yep. Nandi Vardhan. Nandi is an excellent guy. He just got blessed with a baby girl about a few days back. And he is the CEO of Neos Capital Advisors. He has over a decade experience in hotels and transactions and advisory of small and mid-sized hotels. He has been helping people in the hospitality industry in setting up small and mid-sized hotels, and has been instrumental in advising and helping them raising capital as well. Nandi, welcome aboard. Thank you for coming over this afternoon.
Thank you.
Abhishek. Abhishek is a founder of a company called Starters CFO. He has more than 10 years experience in providing tax, exchange control, and allied services to his client. He has specialized experience in international taxation, has vast experience in handling clients from diverse fields. That was it, and I will not use this paper anymore. Let's do some real conversations. Sony, let me ask my first question to you. Why are you doing what you are doing? What's your passion? What's your why?
Okay, so Amit, passion is something that I look forward to doing, every single day. Passion is something that keeps me going. It keeps me looking forward to things, looking forward to opportunities, and making every day count. Okay, so I started my entrepreneurial journey about out of pure understanding as to what is the difference that individually I can add to businesses, to people, and most importantly, how can I make my life worth a living? Yeah. So essentially, I have always enjoyed, Amit, simplifying problems or appreciating minimalism and simplicity. Okay, and what I realized, okay, we are in a very complex communication world, right? And my interest of marketing, started only when I realized that this is the power to connect people. Why we connect with Nike so well? Why do we connect with Amul so well? Why Apple as a brand, we relate to Apple. We love possessing an Apple product. So I realized whichever product that I've just mentioned, they have put the foothold or they have a brand understanding because of its simplicity, right? So my passion has always been simplifying things, solving problems, and I'm glad I'm doing it every single day. And that's how I look forward to life and many more exciting journey to go ahead.
Excellent, Sony. That's a great thing that you're doing. It's I think marketing is indeed very important. I think we're learning that from our prime minister as well. No matter whether you're doing whether you're doing less or more, it's very important to convey what you're
Yes.
doing and conveying in the right
Yes.
words, right fashions, right way with compassion is very important. And you're doing a fabulous job. You're doing a fabulous job of helping startups market what they are doing. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Sony. We will learn more from you about your marketing tips in the session.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Over to you, Arnab. Arnab, you are wearing so many hats, like from business plans to crazy about startups to making fabulous presentations for startups, mentoring startups, guiding them, investment, helping them investment. How do you do all of that, and what's your why? What's your passion?
Well, to be honest, I just love startups. That's why the venture name came, The Crazy About Startups. I just enjoy working with startups, thinking about startups. The sheer power of entrepreneurs to create something out of the blue to help people is extremely fascinating for me. Personally, I'm that kind of person who gets bored very easily with one thing. And as a result, working with startups gives me the window to work with several things. We have helped literally to set up a space station in Mexico, to a food truck in New York, to an alternative fuel cell, to a deep tech algorithm trading. And that's what is the beauty of working with startups. And whatever happened, the multiple companies and everything has happened very, very organically. And I would love to give you a quote. We started as a consulting firm for SMEs, but soon we saw there was a rise of entrepreneurship. See, I started 13 years back where entrepreneurship was not a fashion at that point of time. I read a quote a long time back that during California gold rush, barely anybody got rich finding gold, but it's the people who supplied shovels and axes made it really big. So I was not the gold rush kind of a guy, but I saw entrepreneurship was becoming a gold mine. So why don't we start giving them the shovels and the axes? Hence came the business plan experts, which was an amazing journey. Then automatically, while we were pitching for the investors, I found that the presentation was extremely boring and ugly with bullet points and the clip arts and the same old thing. Everybody, there are things written about it, death by PowerPoints and everything. So we started looking out and we understood that, like back there, the communication as a subject was not really explored in India, business communication. So we started with the presentation GFX with a simple idea. It can be one of the most stupid ideas that anybody can think about, I guess, is we'll just make presentations better. And we have seen the world react to is who needs presentation designers to the world is I need a presentation to be designed. So yeah, we have seen all these changes. So we are always active looking for new avenues or constantly innovating. In fact, next week we are launching a new platform of presentations which kind of works across all the devices. Now, it just gives me great joy working with entrepreneurs, working with ideas, and just it keeps me going.
That's a very interesting thing what you said, Arnab. So, you know what? A lot of companies were also old enough, about 10 years old, 12 years old, 15 years old. They also call themselves startups because it's cool to be called as a startup. So, what do you say about them?
See, startup. If you look at the chronological event of a startup, it is like like initial company, like initial years, a lot of chaos in the system, not a lot of processes and everything. But there is another angle to the startup is the sheer culture of it. Anybody who's joining a startup is joining because of the merit, not because of anything else. There is nothing called defined processes. Everything is a chaos. Everybody's pushed into the water first before they learn how to swim. And the sheer culture of ensuring that people joining us smarter than you, giving them empowerment, valuing everybody's opinion, ensuring that there is the amazing camaraderie between the team. It's just the fact that, there is no hierarchy. There is no bureaucracy. That also can define as culture of a startup. So I don't think there's nothing wrong. This is an amazing thing that people can call it a startup, but ensure that the culture is also like a startup and not getting bureaucratic at the end of the day. Because as I see it, tomorrow and the new generation are not interested in just simply, simple remuneration-based jobs. They're looking at a purpose in a job. They're looking at more important things like job satisfaction, learning, growing. And I think startups are going to play a great role in that.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that insight, Arnab. That was very good. Over to you, Abhishek. Abhishek, you call yourself Starters CFO. Uh, how do you help startups?
Yeah. So as a CFO, see these startups, as rightly mentioned by Arnab, so we can call it startup. Anyone who is starting up a business is a startup. But because of this internet era, although the startups are growing like anything, we can see that there are companies which have become unicorn in 4 years, 5 years time period. There are companies who have touched team size of 1,000 people, 2,000 people in such a small span of time. So when a company starts, it's not possible for them to hire a full-time CFO, which may cost anywhere between 40 lakh rupees to a crore rupees in a year. So therein what the starter CFO come into picture, wherein we manage their accounting, taxation, compliances on one part, and side by side, we give them strategic advisory in terms of what should be the valuations, who are the competitors. If you are an education technology startup, so what multiple Baiju has raised funding, or what multiple Vedantu has raised funding, or what kind of shares we should issue to the investors, like CCPS, equity shares. Similarly, there are other things like employee stock options, etc. So these are few finance terms which are very, very much relevant for startups as compared to regular SMEs. And that's where starter CFO comes into picture.
Excellent. That's a great piece of advice, Abhishek. Abhishek, a lot of startups that we deal with, so we help a lot of startups in their IP. We help them with their patents, trademarks, and other areas, primarily IP. Now, since we deal a lot of deep tech companies who are filing patents in the US and in India, a lot of them have started having US as their main, let's say, parent company, and India as a branch, India as a subsidiary of the US company. Is that advisable by you? If yes, why?
Yeah. So see, majorly the companies which are really reaching heights and which has global scalability. So we can see that most of them, they are either incorporating in US or they are going to Singapore. So it depends on what kind of investors generally they have on board. So if there are investors, like if there are US investors, so they prefer that a company should be in US, and so that all the patents, all the things are protected over there, and it gets global recognition kind of thing. They don't want to be a part of legal issues at the other parts of the world or so. And then if the investors are moved from, Asia and Southeast specific regions, then they prefer to incorporate in Singapore. However, with Startup India, the 10,000 crore rupees fund which government has issued to VCs as alternative investment funds. So they promote that these companies remain incorporated in India. They do not go outside India. So there are a lot of clients which have got funding from VC funds out of the government fund of fund scheme. And then the condition on this AIFs is that the company should not move outside India. So of course, if we talk about global scalability point of view, so of course the parent companies, if they are incorporated in US or they are incorporated overseas, so that gives more investor approach and the higher checks to these startups. But at the same time, if we are funded from, we are taking advantages of the Indian government scheme, then yeah, we have to be in India. Other than
Excellent.
that, many companies like who are operating in US or in Dubai and different areas, and they have their backend teams which are being based in India. So this is a very common thing which we see, that all the development team is based in India and world is the market for these companies.
Fabulous, Abhishek. That's a great tip. I think we will talk a little more detail about government funding that is happening in India for startups in the session later. Nandivardhan, why do you think, in your experience, why do you think startups fail?
That's an excellent question. Actually, we very predominantly always speak about startup success, but the failure rate is much higher than the success, to be honest. Even in our own sector, hospitality sector, multiple startups opened, and then within 6 months, 12 months, they closed down also. So I think planning is one thing, ideation is one thing, but at the same time, the practicability to execution is the key. So along with that, getting the right team is very critical and important. If we don't, these basic things are on place, in my experience, I've noticed that a lot of startups actually go to toss. Even if after the seed capital or with your own initial capital, you manage to reach a certain critical level. I've seen when you get Series A or Series B, when you have excessive cash in your bank account, I've seen a lot of promoters getting easy while taking decision making at that point of time. So I'm someone who strongly believes that you need to dilute equity very miserly. Raise only that much what you required for your system, for your growth. Be very sure, and don't raise capital just because it is available. Raise if your venture actually require it. That's very critical and important. So I will not name an organization, a couple of hotel chains whom we advise who've grown rapidly, okay, in a couple of years, and they raised good amount of funds also. And I've noticed when they were having excessive cash availability in the system, in the bank account, promoters went very easy and they started taking very aggressive calls, which led to debacle for those organizations. Otherwise, in some of the cases, they were having a fabulous team who did extremely very well in the initial phase. So in my experience that, if you take precautionary calls on these couple of things, then you can actually sail pretty well.
Thank you so much, Nandivardhan. I think that was, you were bang on it. Even so, you spoke about that startups primarily fail because of lack of proper execution, lack of good team, and aggressive calls, especially because you're taking calls on somebody else's money. So if you take calls considering your own money, you would perhaps be a little more careful about what calls you're taking. Thank you for that tip, Nandi. Arnab, I want to ask you, so you have been mentoring a lot of startups, and you also work with a lot of about 1,800 plus startups. So how do you choose the startup that you work with?
Well, there are two ways I work with startups. One is pro bono or equity based, where I do investments. That is a startup where I feel very comfortable with the team, the tech, it has scalability, everything has to work out properly. In the sense, the preparedness, the basic gel that I have with the team, if I'm in a position to suggest them, if I can literally help them, mentor them or not, is I have enough foothold in that industry, network in the industry to make a difference or not. So these are the criteria I would choose before mentoring a startup or even taking up for investment. But when it comes to catering them through business plan, as simple as that, any businesses which is legal according to the government rules and they're going to pay us, we're going to cater to them because that's a service we're going to give out. And not necessarily I'll be involved in those startups. We have an excellent team of consultants, very, very, very dynamic, young and experienced people that helps them. So, but when it comes to working with startups, primarily, I'm very comfortable with certain industries, certain people, certain ways. But if you ask me, one thing that I really look forward to is the preparedness of the startup founders and the personality of the startup founders. That is very important for me. It is all about choosing a team, because if I'm involved with them, they are involved with me. And especially when it comes to investment, we're kind of getting married. So it's very important that we look into every aspect of it. And it's going to be a long-term thing, really.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Sony, if for the startup that come to you, you help them in primarily marketing what they do. What are the 3 marketing tips would you give to startups who have, let's say, started in the last 1 or 2 years?
No, Amit, the first thing that I start with is understanding that the problem that they're trying to solve. Okay, the first thing I emphasize as, are you clear about the purpose of having your startup? Okay, there's a lot of clarity has to come in. Why did I start? Okay, what is the problem that I'm solving? Second thing is, what is the vision that you have, what is the sustainability that you have planned, okay, and have you known your customers really well, okay. So the three priority focus, the three tips that I emphasize is the purpose, and what is the vision that you have, and have you known your customers. So I think what Arnab said, I just wanted to add and extend a little bit to this. Yes, the preparedness is one of the most important, because you've got to plan really well and prepare the entire approach. And on top of it, what I prioritize is the values and the ethics and integrity. That is what I always prioritize in communicating that to the startup. Because what happens if the product is good, there's a lot of passion behind it. They may get carried away, as Nandi said, that with a lot of investments, they get the funding and all. But how are they channelizing that? That will determine what value system that they have, what integrity that they have, and how are they very sure of the long-term vision that they have. I think that is precisely what I focus. And because somebody who is starting a business, he's very much understanding. He knows what it takes to be there. So as mentors, I take it as an enormous responsibility to be a watchdog, to have a yardstick, to tell them that where they may go wrong. Okay, somebody starting a business, he or she has it everything in them. So where I guide them and counsel them that, guys, make things simple, make things, as minimum as you can, and focus on these three very important things: is the purpose, the vision that you have, and have you known your customers really well.
Excellent. I think that's a great tip, Soni. Yes, so purpose, vision, values is a very important concept that are being taught. But you know what? A very few startups are able to actually work on these things. You know what? I heard from Jeff Bezos and also from Henry Ford that you must hire people who are smarter than you. So if you have the courage to hire people who are smarter than you, that means you're going in the right direction. So, and for that you need to have right values, and for that you need to have the right passion, you need to have the right vision. So and you know what, one important thing I've also learned is that startups primarily also fail because they keep working on their company, they keep working in the company, and do not work on themselves. If you let's say this is a problem and this is where you are, if you keep working on yourself and start becoming better version of yourself, the problems become small, and then you can kill the problem very easily. So startups founders, if you're not working on yourself, the problems come on to you head on, and then it's very difficult to solve them. And if you up your game constantly, become better version of yourself, you can kill the problem. So that's also very important, which you just clearly brought the point home by talking about the right values and by talking about how you have to identify your passion and customers. Thank you so much, Soni, for bringing the point home. Abhishek, so startups think that once the money has come, once they've got a seed round or a series A or a series B, the problems is solved. What would you advise to startups who just think that if they've gotten funding, work is done? What would be your advice to them?
Yeah. So see, we have a lot of practical examples, and we have all kind of people. So there are startups who are too much concerned about the money which they have raised, and they are very, careful about whatever expenditure they are doing. And then there are some startups for whom it is very easy to sell their equity than to sell their product. So these kind of startups, when we keep on selling our equity and raising the funding, and then we have a kind of, global standards or the perfection kind of mindset wherein we want to have best of the designing companies, we want to have best of the services which we are hiring for our company. So at that particular point of time, the situation may become difficult for startups at certain stage. So it is very important for the companies to make analysis of how much is the monthly cash burn which they are doing and how much is the amount they are left with their bank account, so that they can start raising more money, or they can there should be some kind of expenditure which can be curtailed in times if they are not able to raise next round of funding. So yeah, so for the startups who are raising their seed round, so it's not a success mantra. So success mantra is if we are operationally profitable. So if we are able to make profits on the product we are selling, on the services we are selling, of course there would be some break-even analysis wherein if we have indirect expenses of, let's suppose, a crore rupees in a year. So there may be some break-even analysis that will achieve a sales figure of 5 crores at that point of time will be break-even kind of thing. But we should be very careful that the business model should be operationally profitable. Vis-a-vis, we think of that we'll build up a community and that community will have lakhs of people and then will become profitable. So that can be a risky proposition.
That's one viewpoint, and I truly appreciate that, Abhishek. That over the years, startups must think about profitability, having a good bottom line, basically. But also, there's one more philosophy, and this philosophy is that investors who are investing in seed round, let's say, want to exit in Series A or Series B. Investors who are investing in Series A want to exit in Series B or Series C. So, investors basically want a lot of growth and want the startups to keep making losses and keep raising more money so that they can exit in a future round. So basically, burn more cash, get more clients, burn more cash, get more clients, be negative, be loss making, get more seed fundings so that we can exit a later round. How do you counter that kind of philosophy?
Yeah, so there is nothing wrong in that philosophy. So whenever a startup is raising funding, so the purpose of raising funding is to penetrate all over the world. It's like slow and steady. We can kind of put, like, we can be all over the world in next 5 years. But if we get if we get the funding, so we should be bang on there in just a year or 2 years, basically. So that's the purpose of raising funding. And whenever a startup has raised funding, so definitely they will be in losses because they are spending the money into the customer acquisition and marketing and reaching new geographies, investing on their technologies. So there is nothing wrong about that. But in long term, the business model should be such that the product which they are selling should be profitable operationally. Of course, there is an analysis of cost of customer acquisition and market penetration. There are targets which are given by the existing investors, milestones which are set for future funding that basically multiplies. We can see that there are startups whose valuation kind of multiplies or doubles or triples in just 3 months or 6 months period. So all this, of course, there is a game wherein the investors also have huge connects and they are connecting to bigger investors, which gives us more fancy valuation. But at the same time, whenever we are raising funding, so naturally we'll be in losses because we'll be spending more in marketing and customer acquisition.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a follow-up question to that, to Arnab. Arnab, if you see, a lot of startups who are making losses year on year are becoming unicorns, and startups who have been able to get some profits are struggling to make ends meet in terms of becoming a unicorn. So as an investor, are you an aggressive investor in terms of burn more cash and get more clients, or what kind of investor are you?
Okay, let me answer this in two parts. Okay, let's talk about the startups making losses, yet their value is going up. Okay, so we were taught finance on company existence from a fiduciary responsibility. A company is valued from their monetization or the financial point of view. Traditionally, like if you go on 20 years back or even more than that. But there's a new kind of valuation which has come in, which is the users that they attract. Recently had a session, at an amazing session with Professor Ashwath Damodaran, and he is known as the god of valuation. And he said something very interesting. He said, are the startups aiming towards changing the behavior of the people or not? If a startup is aiming very big, that they want changing the behavior of the people, and that will take a lot of money to do that. People do not change. We, by default, humans are very resistant to change. But if we can change the behavior of the masses, we will see traditional businesses would not have the economies of scale to sustain their business anymore. So even if the people who are laggards in that technology or in that space would be forced to join the new bandwagon. Let's be honest, next time you are going from somewhere to somewhere and you do not have a car of your own, would you actually book a Kali Pili taxi? Probably not. Next time you want to order from a restaurant, will you call them up and say, can you deliver? And they say, we don't have delivery guys because everything is done from Swiggy, Zomato, and the et al. Next time you want to text somebody, you don't do SMS, you do WhatsApp. So these companies have changed the behavior of the people, which is a huge thing. There is a lot of hoopla about Cred having losses a lot of money. But I'll give you the example of why it is relevant out here. Cred has attracted the top income people of India as their database. Now what they do with the data, they are talking about lending platforms. They can do several things with that. They can actually replace credit cards. So what do they do as a startup founder is the strategy that they're going to take. And it might fail or it might not work. So yes, the valuation is not for today, but for tomorrow. If you look at futures and options or derivatives, it's not a value of today, but the demand of tomorrow. If a commodity has a certain demand, you're expecting a shortage of a commodity in the future, your F&O options will go up by default. If you're looking at a company's performance in the future, their yield will go up. Equity is based on the speculation. So let's not confuse the factors. Like a typical valuation of a net worth is not applicable anymore for startups, especially when you're doing the behavior. But as Abhishek said, there's a lot of other investors also joining the bandwagon, and there's a lot of startups joining the bandwagon who are not really creating a future value or a behavioral change, but simply using the hype of the media to push their valuation up. And that is normalized. Flipkart changed the way we do shopping. But even Flipkart's valuation was 1/3 overnight by Goldman Sachs. So normalization would come in. But yes, there is nothing wrong in not having a profit but has a valuation. But obviously, it is all about the execution in the future, whether the behavioral pattern is changed. Me as an investor is on the other kind altogether. I am not a traditional investor. I'm a very, very early stage investor. I'm looking at very, very innovative tech, something which can be applied and changed and can be applied in Indian market. I'm looking at hardware, IoT, software tech, especially in that area, because that's something I understand. And I am looking at them at a very early stage where my knowledge and my guidance is a value to them. After that, obviously, there'll be the first round of investment. I come in pre-revenue. I probably would come in pre-POC as well. I would probably look at a bunch of brilliant people who needs money to do their MVP. I would help them out with creating their MVP and POC. So I am not even a so-called a typical investor in the investors cycle. I am before that. And that's why I not really would call myself investor, because I do not invest just to make money out of it. It is about creating the value on top of it, and it can be somehow integrated with the value systems that we have inside the organization as well. And furthermore, given the fact that we have a lot of services which are very synergetic to a startup's life cycle, we can help them do a great pitch. We can help them in marketing and branding. We can help them in creating amazing web presence. We can help them with their business plans. We can help them getting their products prepared. We can help them getting their first clients. We can get introduced to the investors. All of this can be given to the startup itself without actually me trying to hassle around the world. So trying of just utilizing the existing infrastructure, existing processes and people that we have to help few more people who are not fortunate enough to have the fund to access these from a professional angle.
Sounds good, Arnav. That's a great tip and a great message that you have given. Nandi, I would like to talk to you a little bit about Oyo, which is making news for all wrong and right reasons. Now, people who are investing into hospitality, and if your experience in hospitality industry and the Oyo case and the WeWork is also perhaps half of it is now gone, and WeWork is hospitality come co-working. So what's the future of hospitality according to you? People who are invested into it, people who are entrepreneurs in the hospitality industry, what's your advice to them?
So Amit, before coming to that question, I would like to add what Arnav and Soni said. Soni said very finely that what's the vision of the promoter? And then Arnav said very smartly that it's very important that what type of value they're trying to bring, how they're gonna, in a sense, that how are the promoters or the businesses looking to change the behavior of the customer. Okay, very fine points. But adding to that, it's very important that whether the promoter is having the vision to strengthen the ecosystem of that particular space. For example, if I'm taking the example of hospitality sector, so currently in this sector, only 16% of the room inventory is in organized space. So we have 1 million rooms available in the country. Out of that, 160,000 is with the organized players. Now, if the balance rooms get converted and or have a brand affiliations, it's going to benefit multiple stakeholders, not just to the business who is converting, but to the multiple stakeholders. What is firstly the technology when going to come? It's going to add value to the vendors. It's going to improve the operations. The employees who are working over there, they're going to have a better profile in terms of their career growth. Okay, the asset valuation going to go up. The owner is going to get benefited. Government is going to get better, tax collection from that. And after that, the business itself, which is going to operate that facility or franchise or manage whichever module they are following, is going to get benefited. So when this entire circle get completed, where each and every stakeholder is getting benefited, that's how the ecosystem is going to grow. If that promoter is having that vision and view on that particular subject, then the chances are bright that it will move towards the right path and right direction. So I think that's very critical and important. Now, coming to your question of OYO, as you said, they're making a lot of noise in the market for the last couple of years for some right reasons and wrong reasons. So areas where I would like to give them credit, they worked in this particular space of unorganized inventory, which was almost 84% of the country inventory. And they very smartly picked up that inventory, which is existing. Because typically in India, it takes you at least 4 to 5 years to develop a hotel because of bureaucratic processes, cost of capital is pretty expensive in our country. And then the asset yield rates are like 6-7%. And these historical assets which are they are there from long time. So the real estate cost is historical. It's much more viable to convert them. So what they did is they started bringing that inventory in their fold, okay, and started giving them a voice. So the entire market was predominantly dominated by branded players in terms they used to dictate the ADRs, what the opening rate in that market, and they give that type of service also. They deserve also. So they started giving them a voice. They started giving them a flavor of what is how the branded hotel operates. And they did fantastic work in technology side by bringing softwares, PMS, property management systems, by giving them, bringing the right content of that particular asset on the e-space, then getting the right pictures of the asset, creative part. They have done good job. And to some extent, here and there, they have done the ground level training also, where there are still a lot of question marks when it comes to the operations. I'll touch that later. But at the same time, they have done pretty well, in terms of the distribution marketing, which Abhishek also spoke that there's nothing wrong in going for aggressive customer acquisition strategy by using your, financial muscles to acquire the customer by going for deep discounting and all that. But the question is always for how long you can do that. It's good to do if you're gonna do like Ola, Uber, and you actually do the behavior change. Whether this is possible in this space or not is another, debate. Now, that's something, right things what they have done. Now, areas where I think they need substantial, involvement is required and a lot of work need to be done. And then this business is touch and feel business. In Uber, my lead time is 30 minutes or 40 minutes, 50 minutes. Even if I have some dissatisfaction, I will not have a lot of problem there. But when I'm booking myself in a room, I'm going to spend, even if I'm a business traveler, I'm going to spend at least 6 to 7 hours in that room. So I'm going to sleep on that bed. I can't compromise with the linen quality, with the air conditioning quality, with the, so typically breakfast is complimentary. So whatever breakfast, and if it's a solo women traveler, security is also an equal concern. So at which locality, which neighborhood and all that. So I think these areas, they still need to improve a lot because the ground level operation is still, in my opinion, is not up to the mark. So a lot of assets which are, fire life safety is a concern, where they probably some of the assets may are not the fire approved assets also. So these are the operation side. If they can improve, then actually then they are taking the, bell and it can move pretty well. So I hope that those guys are working, but right now because of pandemic, the industry is going through a big jolt. So how much bandwidth is available to all that is something which their promoters or the leadership team can prioritize what they need to be done. So that's the area where I think they need a substantial improvement. And if that picks up, probably in 3-4 years, we can see a different organization.
Excellent. So I think there's a lot to learn from OYO, as Nandi pointed out. what good they did, what bad they did, and definitely a lot of people in the hospitality industry can learn from OYO as a case study. Thank you, Nandi, for bringing the insights from your experience. Coming to you, Abhishek, what financial mistakes do startups make, and how can they avoid it?
We'll not say that a lot of mistakes as such these people make, but there are few tips basically which they can get that can make their businesses better. So mostly when these startups are into development stage, they are building a product for themselves, and these are tech people. So they are not very much concerned about these compliances thing basically. So then they kind of avoid doing all these filings with MCA, GST, etc., which lands up them in a lot of problem, because nowadays there are a lot of problems. There are a lot of late fees which the government is putting in. So what we use is ki abhi nahi to kabhi nahi. So kind of late fees which government is imposing is kind of 100 rupees per day per form. So if you have 5 forms, it's a 500 rupees per day for only one ROC non-compliance. Similarly for GST non-compliances. So one part is for accounting and compliances. It is very important that these startups should be complied with. Secondly, at the time of incorporation itself, if it is a very early stage startup, so there are few points like we should have CCPS, compulsory convertible preference share, as a part of our cap table, or our authorized capital should be more than our paid up capital. If there are clauses like right of first refusal or tag along as a part of our articles, so it may be useful at the time of fundraising. We should have, for example, if the startups are raising funding, so the funding amount should come into a separate bank account, and those funds should not be utilized until and unless shares are issued to the investors. So these are few basic things which startups are not doing it. Secondly, there is a concept of shared stamping. So almost 90% of startups after incorporating, they do not have their shares stamped, which is required as per law. And in due diligence whenever due diligence happens, this is a kind of always we see this clause that the share certificates are not stamped. So at an early stage, these are some problems which they come across. Once these startups are into kind of high growth stage or mature stage, then there are separate different types of problems which come across, wherein the revenues, they from the management perspective, they want their revenues to be linked to their KPIs of the people, and they do not have a proper review systems. The revenues are not properly allocated. They do not have cost centers. The expenses are not moving as per budgeted, and there is a lot of variance, due to which a lot of expenses keep coming in, and the plans of expansion become difficult for these startups.
Abhishek, that's too much of financial information, I think, but that's too great. From compliances to whatever you spoke about, from share stamping to parking the funding amount in different bank account, not using it unless it's the shares are issued. That's a lot of valuable information, and I truly appreciate you giving it away as a true giver. Thank you so much for sharing that. Sony, let me also ask you to be a true giver. What mistakes, what marketing mistakes do the startups make, and how can they avoid such marketing mistakes?
Yes, I think Amit, I got to share some important or some interesting facts about, first is when we start a business, okay, it is most important is learning from your mistake. And essentially, when I started my firm, my marketing agency, I miserably failed. I miserably failed in a couple of occasions, and as to what I mean, how do I start? Where did I go wrong? My preparedness was so well, and my confidence is going. My passion has been driving, but why did it not work? Right? I think over the period of time, Amit, I got to learn a lot of things, through introspection as to where did I go wrong, okay? And then creating a kind of bucket list, okay? As a matter of fact, whatever that I do, I maintain an entire checklist of information in my diary. As to for this business, this is what I did good. This is what I should not have done. This I will make sure I do not repeat that. Okay. So taking an inspiration from what I do, I usually work or I only work the talk. So when I meet startups, and Amit, as I've just made it very loud and clear, the criteria on which I support startups and I mentor them, and I make sure that it becomes a very conversational approach to them. First is understanding, is that the mistake or is that something that just was an ignorance, right? So when I meet a startup, when I meet a passionate founder, I try to understand the entire aspect of the business based on the 3 criteria that I just mentioned to you. Because mistake is something, either it is accidental or either it is on purpose. So first we got to understand the reason of that mistake. Why did he or she did that mistake? And what is the impact of that mistake? Whether it is financial, whether it is, related to the business, the operations, and the entire aspect of it. Okay. The first and foremost mistake that every startup does is, first, they have a lot of passion, but they forget the fundamentals. They forget the basics, okay? And the record keeping, the documentation part. First, when we start a business, okay, when I started in 2015, Amit, I think the entire conversation of entrepreneurship was growing, but there were very limited incubation centers, very limited organizations, and very limited support from the government, like now you call Startup Odisha, Startup Delhi, Startup India. It was just at the founding phase. But the biggest mistake that every startup does is not reaching out. Okay, now every information is available. Like LinkedIn, if you browse through LinkedIn, you'll get a list of information. And first and foremost is, have I done my market study? Am I sure what product I have? Is my preparedness worth a while? Am I very sure that is this what I would like to do for the rest of my life? Right? So couple of things that, we have to keep in my mind, make sure that I take learning from every single day and make sure that what kind of, the kind of mistakes that I did or mistakes that a startup did, what was in purpose or it was an accident, and giving them the entire strategy and understanding around it.
That's a great piece of advice, Soni. I think one of the very important takeaway from here was that do not forget your basics. I think working on the basics and making sure the message is clear, succinct, and it goes across well, it hits the matter, it hits the nail is very important. Thank you for bringing the point home, hammering the point home. Thank you so much, Soni. Now, Arnab, my next question is to you. I mean, couple of days back, I was watching this Netflix series about Bill Gates, Inside Bill's Brain. And he has pledged almost all his wealth to cure the problems of the world in Africa and India, other issues, diseases, and all of that. Now, he was spending his money, and suddenly Warren Buffett also pledged about $31 billion of his wealth to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And Bill Gates said, now I have I feel more responsible now, because I would not have felt bad if I wasted my money, but I would feel bad if I waste Warren's money. Now, if you take this analogy to startups, a lot of startup founders do not feel bad wasting investors' money. As Nandi pointed out, they become aggressive, they take wrong calls because it's not their money. How do we make sure the startups also start feeling accountable and responsible for somebody else's money? And they take it very seriously. That how will they sleep if they're wasting somebody else's money? How do we inculcate this emotion or this feeling that they should be feeling accountable and responsible for somebody else's money?
Wow, that is a really hard question. Let me try to answer this. Okay. There has to be a balance. If, as an angel investor, if you to put too much of accountability and breathe down their neck every day, you're going to hamper productivity. And I've seen that happen in several cases. I'll not name the company, but there is a company which I helped them to raise the funds, and there were 5 angel investors involved. Each and every one of them had a different vision, had a different idea. Everybody wanted accountability at a different part of the day. So every 2 hours discussion in a day, 10 hours of the founders' time is gone just to impress the founders. Impress the investors. That's unproductive. We understand that. At the same time, I've met founders also who will say that your job is just to give the money and I will not tell you anything.
You mean investors?
Yes. Don't tell me what to do. I am the genius out here. That's also a huge problem. And that's why I mentioned in the very first question that, investors versus startup entrepreneurs is a marriage. We both have to do compromises. We have to both understand each other very well. Vision is a very important part. Also, we have to understand the vision may change as the market may change. I want to add out here, you have the pattern recognition for every phone these days, like you have to put a pattern to lock your phone and unlock your phone. Imagine the startup scenario is like that. Every second, the pattern changes. So if you went to some other entrepreneur, he will give you this pattern works, but next time you try it, it will not work. It is so dynamic that everything is changes. So Og Mandino had written a book called Greatest Salesman of the World, which says that experience is often overhyped. What might work today might not work tomorrow. And it's perfectly applicable for startups. So nobody knows what is happening, just like Corona. Nobody knows what is happening around the world. Everybody has an opinion about it. So when it comes to accountability, ideally by default, when you actually do this initial psychoanalysis test of the other personality understanding of the entrepreneurs, nobody is there to waste money. Everybody is working for that, the vision of the company, and very passionate about it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have invested in it. But their vision of approaching it or execution might be different from what you feel like. Another thing is like that, there might be two different approaches to it. One is short-term gain, short-term away. Okay, let me tell you this. You remember the movie Social Network? Well, Eduardo was actually forcing him for ads, and Zuckerberg is saying that ads are not cool. See, both are right questions. Facebook actually succeeded, but Twitter didn't. Twitter should have got the ad way. So again, there is lack of right answers to it. So you can't really make a hard and fast compliance-based rule that you should do that. But yes, there should be certain fiduciary reporting. There should be certain seat on the board, which can be influenced by the investors. Having some board of advisors and mentors who have seen the game helps, because most startup entrepreneurs are usually very young and hasn't seen the world from a different perspective. They might be technically very strong, very energetic, innovative, absolutely smarter than the rest of the people in the room. But experience and wisdom play a role out there. So I really don't know how to answer that question, whether that can be, if you force that kind of, imprisonment over a startup entrepreneur, you might not see the greatest innovations of the world. That's the risk. It's a part of the game. And if you are if you're a control freak, I think you should invest in probably lesser risky assets than startup investments. Startup comes with risk, and entrepreneurs are going to take the risks. You have to be very, very okay with that and let them fly. As simple as that.
Absolutely. I think you are absolutely right. So I think investors also understand that if they invest in 10 startups, about 6 or 7 are bound to fail, and they will only be able to make money in about 2 or 3. And it's definitely a marriage. I hope before the investors and entrepreneurs marry, if there was a concept of dating, to know each other first and then they marry, that would have perhaps worked.
That's what happens actually. Today a lot of stress is given on the meetings, and if I tell you the ratio, this is I have found the hard way. In a 10 startup investment, you're bound to lose all your money in 2 startups for sure, 2 to 3 startups, nothing doing. For 4 to 5 startups, you will not make any money or minimal returns, but at least your assets are going to be secured. There's only 1 or 2 startups which are going to make you rich, and that's good enough.
Yes, I think that mathematics is absolutely correct. So Abhishek, I want to ask you a question about government schemes. I think you touched upon them. What schemes the government has for startups, and how do people like you can help in availing these schemes?
As we all know, that in 2008, basically Barack Obama announced Startup America. And on the similar grounds, our Honorable Prime Minister started Startup India on his speech on 26 January 2016, wherein he allocated 10,000 crore rupees fund of funds for these startups, which has to be invested in startups. And the interesting part of this scheme is that the funds do not come from the government. So the government give funds to the VC investors who are like seasonal investors and who are experienced investors. And what they say that, for example, if we talk about Ratan Tata, so they tell that you come out with a fund of 500 crore rupees and then we'll match that contribution. So in that sense, 10,000 crore gets multiplied and it becomes 20,000 crore. Secondly, the money is not flowing because of some bureaucracy or some kind of, under table payments or bribe or anything. So the funds are going to deserving startups because these startups need to make the presentations to AIFs. There are approximately 54 AIFs to which these funds have been sanctioned. And then these AIFs then invest into these startups. So this is the scheme of the central government. Other than that, there are a lot many state government schemes like Delhi, Rajasthan, Karnataka is very active, and then there is Kerala. So there are a lot of schemes of the government which are promoting startups. Generally, these state governments are very active at a very, very early stage, wherein the funds are being given to these educational institutions like IITs and different colleges, which give funds to the students ranging between 5 lakh rupees to 25 lakh rupees, based on which they are able to launch their products. Other than that, the fund of fund schemes basically promote startups at Series A, Series B round also, and they fund them at that stage of funding.
So what you're saying is this is actually happening. It's not just on paper. The money is actually coming to the startups by the government. That's a great thing to learn. Do you or somebody else help startups to get the money in from the government?
See, there are various other benefits also, like for Startup India. So if we are registered as Startup India, there are two levels of recognition. So if we are registered with DIPP, so we get this angel tax exemption, which is very important clause, which was brought in 2019 by the government, and that gave a relief to lot many startups. And then if we are also registered with Inter-Ministerial Board, we get income tax exemptions, etc. Other than that, talking about funding, so it's not specifically that we have to apply to government for getting funding. It's just like normal fundraising. And more than startup CFO, I'm sure like people like Sony, people like Arnab can help startups to approach investors. And these are like the normal investment banking channel through which we can get funds from government fund of fund schemes. There are some subsidies, etc. For example, for manufacturing businesses, if they are listed under MSME, they get subsidy of 10% of the investment amount, subject to maximum of 15 lakh rupees. Yeah, so we can assist people in applying for that subsidies. And there are some taxation benefits like refund of GST or some benefits on export of services and products, which we help people to get the benefit of.
Excellent. That's a great piece of advice, Abhishek. Thank you so much for that. In the last round, this is about, we are just about 5-10 minutes left. If the speakers have a question, they can ask that they want to ask to a fellow speaker, you can shoot now.
Okay, I have a question, not a question per se, a kind of inquisitiveness for Abhishek. Okay, Abhishek, yes, a lot of approach which takes along is a giveaway, and which I always value is sharing information and reaching out to them, and because that is what experience matters. Experience gives you an opportunity to help people and understand that. So just pretty inquisitive, because most problem that startups really lack is understanding the legalities, understanding the financials. What is that you really suggest? I would just had from a friend's advice that if I have a startup with me, or if there are multiple of opportunities I have in hand, so what is the suggestions that you start or you would like to give for every startup starting their entrepreneurial journey?
So this is a very relevant, important question, which should be the part of curriculum of startup education. That while starting up, it's very important. So at the time of incorporation itself, so the common question comes whether we should go for a private limited company or we should incorporate for a LLP. So there are a lot of factors which comes into it, and we can see that 99% of companies are incorporated as private limited companies. There are some school of thoughts which say that due to less compliances, first of all, we should go for an LLP, and later on we should convert it into a private limited. So all these aspects basically depends on what is the vision and future prospects of any startup is. If they are not willing to raise external funding, yes, LLP is a very good option. But if they are kind of startup way wherein they want to get more investors on board and world is the market for them, then private limited companies are must go for them. Then at the time of incorporation, like we already mentioned that there should be some CCPS allotment, which should be part of cap table. Our authorized capital should be more than our paid up capital. And then there are some clauses which should be part of article of association, which makes company investor friendly. As in when the investors are ready, so we are ready to take funds immediately. We do not have to wait for these compliances to happen. Other than that, for making, in case of startups, it's always like Arnab also mentioned that there are different set of investors who are on board, and every investor has a separate kind of requirement. So as a CFO team, we are always busy in preparing different kinds of reports for the same startup, because every investor want to have a look from its own ways. So it's very important that from the very beginning, you can make a Google Drive kind of thing wherein you keep on saving all your documents in a systematic way. And whenever there are due diligence which is going in, so you always have all the documents ready at one place. So this is very, general and common thing, which we can say that's a common sense, but generally people do not practice it. So we need to tell them that we can have all these kind of things. Similarly, we can have a separate functional mail ID, finance@yourcompany.com, which can be used from very beginning, wherein we are getting all the invoices, etc. at that mail ID. So that helps us in storing all the data at one place for our company. So, and of course, for startups, if we talk about, there are many for credit cards. It's a carbon card we get, that's a credit card, for example. So you have a credit card in the name of the company, that is very good, because, for example, a startup takes 2 crore rupees funding, they spend 1.5 crore rupees credit card, and their personal tax returns are 5 lakh, 6 lakh rupees. So they end up paying, getting notices from income tax department. So if we have a corporate credit card, that is useful. For managing payroll, there are a lot of tools, a lot of startups we use, particularly Opin, that has been acquired by Razorpay. So even if you have 2 employees or 3 employees, so you can use those kind of tools which get automated payroll, which get automated pay slips are generated, it files the TDS returns, and these employees also get a feel like they're working with some big companies. Similarly, there are a lot many other tools, like for invoicing, we use for invoicing, we use this Zoho Books, QuickBooks, and then Tally also have a lot of advanced feature nowadays. There are apps like BizAnalyst, which gives us anytime access to our books of accounts. So these are few tips which we have like, we can talk about, we can have a separate session on all these aspects basically. But yeah, these are few tips from finance perspective, which is there for startups.
Lovely. Thanks for the information, Abhishek. Amit, can I ask one more question if I'm allowed?
Go ahead and shoot.
Okay, this I would say this a suggestion I would need from Arnab. Okay, I mean a kind of a deep level thought I want, Arnab, is every startup that is progressing. They are looking at valuations. They're looking like they're forgetting out the main thing. Why did I start? What is a problem that I wanted to address? And but invariably over the journey they miss out the bigger picture. What is the story? Okay, creating the entire story, because I emphasize a lot of values, ethics, integrity, and as Amit just mentioned that why did Bill Gates said no, it is a lot of responsibility I have because value something that is intrinsic in him. So my question, Arnab, here is how and what is the right approach to let startups know that you got to communicate the entire business and with your customers over a story. So what is your take on that?
Well, I think that has been the norm of startups. Like, it reminds me of the book All Marketers Tell Stories by Seth Godin, I guess. Yeah. But often than not, especially after an investment, a successful investment, it's very likely that the story will be changed. Now, I'm not saying it's bad or it's good. Sometimes what happens, pivoting is a part of the role. Like, for example, for us, pivoting was very important at a particular point of time. Sometimes calculated, sometimes driven by the market forces. Are you pivoting for the right reason or not? Or are you pivoting for a certain, let's see, expectation of certain other investors, right? And if you're pivoting, are you kind of losing your vision on the way? You know, I don't know, name a company. There is the very popular internet-based company which started a B2B way and then got funded, and then they went a B2C way. You know, and they went really good. But there are other companies that I've seen which has changed their vision because of the investors and hasn't really been able to like stay on with their story. So it's hard to say that, you know, like it's again, given the fact that it's so dynamic. Now, I would say it's all about, again, the comfort level of the people. Some people are born to change their stories. In the sense, like, for example, personally, I'm okay with today, this might be a story, that might be another story, as long as the journey is there. And some people might be very much attached to their own story. Now, for example, it's the same thing comes out as when people are kind of, I asked a simple question to entrepreneurs is, how do you feel about selling your venture? Some people will say, no, under any company, I'll not sell my venture. It's my baby. And some people will say, yeah, absolutely. I would sell it today only if you want to. Now, I want entrepreneurs somewhere in between. But again, somebody who holds on to a fund is not a very good investment. And somebody who was just looking at money is not also a very good thing. So I really can't say that whether the story should be stuck on with or not. But pivoting is necessary as a business strategy. But forcing to pivot just because your greed is bad.
Thanks. Thank you so much. I mean, that answers my question. Thank you so much, Arnab.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, guys. Guys, it has been a fantastic. Yeah.
We have 2 minutes. So.
Yeah, sure, Abhishek. Go on.
So, I would be interested to know that how Photon Legal helps startups in their IP thing. And one very frequently asked question is that, can we kind of patent our idea, or how we can protect our idea, basically?
Sure. So,
I also had the same question. And I would add on to that question also, if you can answer me this, we see a lot of licensing deal that happens outside. You know, FMCG process, probably somebody has come up with that, or, you know, like one of the e-tailer, you know, like I have come up with a process, somebody has come up with a piece of technology, which to sell in the market is going to be very difficult, but if to sell to larger players, it can be great to licensing deals. Do you see a lot of these license deals happening? Or if so, how can we start doing that in India?
Excellent. So a bunch of excellent questions there. So let me tell you what Photon Legal does. What Photon Legal, for example, myself and my partners as well, we are engineers and lawyers. So we primarily do IP, and IP would mean patents and trademarks and copyright. So a lot of startups come to us primarily to protect their ideas. So they are at idea stage, but they know how the idea works. So if you know how the idea works, you can patent it. You need not have prototype for it. You need not do it. You need not implement it. For example, let's say if you tell me, Amit, I want to patent the idea this pen is flying. You can't patent the idea. Only if you tell me how the pen can fly, then you can patent the idea of a flying pen. So if you know the how part of the idea, then you can patent the idea. If you do not know the how part, you will not be able to patent the idea. So a lot of our clients, about 60% of our clients are in the US, 40% of clients are in India. These are two geographies we serve, from deep tech, software, mechanical, different domains. Some people come to us at the idea stage when they know the idea is building up, and some people come to us after they've built a prototype. So, but we advise our companies, we advise our clients to come to us as early as possible, because if you are thinking something, somebody else in the world is also thinking the same thing, perhaps, most likely thinking the same thing, perhaps. And if you file first, that's when you have an invention date. That's when you have your mark on the ground. So that's one. Second question was, how do you protect the idea? I think that question is I answered. Photon Legal is doing a lot of stuff for startups in India and the US to help protect the ideas in India and US. As far as patent is concerned, you have to file the patent in different countries. If you're filing a patent in India, your invention is protected only in India. That means if you, let's say, filing a patent for this glass in India, this pen in India, then nobody in India will be able to make this pen, but people in the US will be able to make this pen. So if you do not want anybody in the US as well to make this pen, you have to file the same patent in the US as well. So that's why we help our clients file patent application in multiple countries: India, US, Canada, especially English-speaking countries, Europe, where it's easy, it's not so expensive. If you go to Japan, China, it's a little more expensive. Now, talking about licensing, yes, so as far as patents are concerned, US is the country to file patents in. But yes, India has done a lot in the last few years to recognize IP, recognize patents, and these deals are also happening in India. So we have a bunch of clients. For example, one of our clients has filed a patent application for a vending machine for sugarcane juice. So if you know, sugarcane juice is a roadside ganne ka juice is a roadside commodity. Now this guy, one of our clients, their name is CaneBot. They had filed a patent for a vending machine for ganne ka juice. We filed the patent in India. It's granted in India in about 8 months, which is one of the fastest in the world. 8 महीने में patent grant हो गया. US takes about 2.5 years. Japan takes about 12 months to grant a patent. China takes about 15 months to grant a patent. India में अभी 8-10 महीने में patent grant हो रहा है only for startups. If you have a startup certificate from DIPP, your patent can be granted in about a year's time. So now they are thinking of licensing this vending machine patent to, let's say, companies who are already in the vending machine business, let's say Pepsi or Coke, who have technology for vending machine. You license this patent to a vending machine company or people who are already in the business, people who have sales channels, logistics figured out. You do not have to do it yourself. You just license the patent to all of these people who have things in place, logistics in place, technology in place, sales channels in place, and you're just making money on royalty. So yes, these are now happening in India from last few years, and the Modi government has done pretty well, at least in IP space. In India, patent was taking about 6-7 years to get a grant. Now it takes about 8 months, 9 months to get a grant in India, which is not bad. Did I answer your question, Abhishek and Arnab?
Wonderful. And I think you guys are perfectly suited for this, given your tech background and the legal background, because most of the time, patents, when it's filed, needs to be laid out in the technical way, which probably the entrepreneurs or the ideators might not be able to do that. Wonderful work you guys are doing. Very, very nice.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
One thing that if we are registered with MSME and the patent has been granted in India, then we can make an application to Government of India and they reimburse the expenditure which has been done on patent up to 1 lakh rupees to the company. So a lot of people don't know about this. So this can be very good for your clients.
Absolutely. So MSME का registration अगर आपके पास है, the Indian government gives you 1 lakh rupee upon the grant of the patent. And if you choose to file the patent, let's say in a foreign country, the Indian government gives you up to 5 lakh rupees for filing a patent application in a foreign country. Now, these grants are exceptional. Some of our clients have also obtained these grants, and these grants are coming from the government. It takes a little bit of time, but they do come in time. Great. I think we should have a one-to-one session again whenever we can. But guys, this was fantastic session. Really appreciate you being such givers. You know, when you are a giver, when you are giving away your knowledge in a session like this, where especially in times like these, where people can use this knowledge and can do something about it, you feel good. If you're a giver, you always walk straight and you walk up, you with the chest up, with the chin up. So takers will walk bent. So you guys, all of us, such givers, and really appreciate you giving away your secret sauce and sharing such fantastic thing in this session. We record this session and we will be snipping it down to small multiple 5-minute video talks and tagging you on different social media platforms. Once again, thank you so much for coming and being such a fabulous panel.
Thank you so much for having us here. Pleasure meeting everyone.
Yes.
Everyone, it's a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, Arnab. Thank you, Soni. Thank you, Nandi.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.
Yeah. Good day. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.